Gotta do that. Back to the past and alright, Jack. Gotta do that. Back to the past and alright, Jack. Gotta do that. Back to the past and alright, Jack. Gotta do that. Back to the past and alright, Jack.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Episode 200, not 200, 207. My goodness. Here again. It happened. Slowly. I had a moment of panic when I thought I uploaded one of our previous episodes, and I looked and it was like, last episode, 26 days ago. Oh no.
Oh, it happens.
Yes, we're here once again with Robert.
Trying not to be a once-a-month podcast.
Failing horribly. Veet.
Hello.
And me, James. The one whose fault it is.
Oh, there are reasons. Genuine reasons. That's all good, mate.
I don't accept them out of spite.
Oh, man. So Veet, how has the interim period been for you?
Well, since the last episode, I've managed to watch 2 movies at the cinemas, and quite in complete contrast. There's similarities in what way? First off, I got to see the Power Rangers movie. My daughter was really keen, and after our previous episode on the Power Rangers, I thought, what the hell, I'll go with her and watch them. And
Poor man.
No, I had a good time, primarily because I went in with low expectations. I knew enough of the tropes and the themes of the show to understand what was going on, what was happening. I got the energy from my daughter sitting next to me, who's all excited and sort of, all into the Power Rangers, and you could see her, fangirling out at certain moments. I have to admit, though, after James had mentioned about the scene where, what do you call those machines that they ride in? You mentioned them, and I forgot.
The Zords.
Zords, that's it. When the Zords are going hell for leather and the Go-Go Power Rangers theme comes up, I just sat up myself and I went, yes! That's what I came to see. Look, it was enjoyable. It was a reasonably good popcorn movie. I actually thought Elizabeth Banks, who played Rita Revolta, did a better job than what you gave her credit for. Can't say it's a really in-depth character to start off with, but I thought she did it quite well. But I had a good time, and that's basically what I wanted from the movie. In contrast to that, sitting on the other side of me is my wife Claire, and she's just not getting it at all. She's just not enjoying it. She's picking at all the faults. She's just going, what the hell am I being brought to watch? And we said, you didn't have to come. Sam and I were happy to just watch it on our own. But so I was the person in the middle going, it wasn't a great movie, but I had fun. My daughter's going, it was just fabulous. And my wife's going, it's a piece of poo. So there you go. In contrast to that, last night I went to see Beauty and the Beast. Occasionally, when you're in a relationship and your partner is into different types of genres in movies, you sort of have to concede, and you can't go to sort of action movies the whole time. We went to see Beauty and the Beast. Now, having said that, I actually enjoy the original Disney animation for Beauty and the Beast. I will admit here, and it will be the subject of my next episode, will be musicals, of which we're discussing Disney musicals.
I hate you already.
All right.
Oh, my God.
So, I will admit I'm a a musicals lover. We'll get that into that another day. So I went into this with understanding what I was getting into. As I'm watching this, and it is pretty much for a live action plus CGI copy of the animated movie. Fortunately, you can't, when you see Emma Watson on screen, you can't get past, particularly in certain scenes where she's holding and reading a book, or she's in awe of the library she's standing in, you see Hermione Granger. You can't help it but see that. Otherwise, she played a good Belle. The thing that stood out for me for the most watching this movie is, and in contrast to Power Rangers, I thought, was how far we have come in merging live action with CGI. And this for me, this movie was the most seamless integration of both. The minute detail and the way it merged, it all fitted in wonderfully. It was so hard to tell what was real and what was CGI. There was no, you get that fracturing sometimes when you get the two imposed on each other on a screen. You got that tearing sort of feel, that look. There was none of that. It was seamless. It was wonderful. And I was just amazed at how far that technology has come. In contrast to that, Power Rangers has the CGI. The CGI is good, but you could tell they didn't have the Disney money to put into this production, because there was that sort of glaring contrast between the live film and the CGI, and occasionally you got a little bit of that tearing on screen. It was just the thing that stood out for me the most. One last thing I'll say about the movie is I would have liked to have seen a dirtier, grittier, nastier Beast. But it's a Disney movie, so that ain't going to happen. But I still had a good time.
That Beast was played by Ron Perlman in the 90s.
Yes, it was. And that was probably grittier and sort of dirtier than sort of people what were wanting. But there you go. That was my two highlights in the last couple of weeks. I'll leave it at that.
I watched a couple movies too. I watched, Reptilicus and Cry Wilderness.
Okay.
Also known as the first two episodes of the Return of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Right.
Oh my god. It's like it never stopped. It's like it's like I went to sleep in like 1999. I woke up the next day and it's Mystery Science Theater all over again. Like, as soon as it came on, the theme song is familiar enough that I was singing along with it. I really like the new characters. Felicia Day is in it. Patton Oswalt is in it. Mm-hmm. Like, it is a roaring good time. I found myself laughing several times, like having to pause the show and hold my sides, just because some of the jokes caught me off guard. I am in love all over again. Good.
I never actually saw any of the original, so it's a completely different cast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Felicia Day plays as the granddaughter of the original evil scientist who's trying to perform experiments to drive people mad using bad movies.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but it does have some familiar characters. It still has the original robots of Crow and Crow T Robot and Tom Servo, but they're voiced by new people because, my God, those people can't do that forever. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. What about you, Robert?
I'm happy about MST3K as well. main thing for me has been playing Mass Effect Andromeda, obviously. Finished that after an insane 125-hour single-player campaign adventure.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of that was just because I would stop and look around at things. I'm like, it's so pretty. And then, that would be me just staring at things going, it's so pretty. And that was it. I would just not stop doing that. A lot of what we said last time, still true. I mean, there's a lot of things that the game just does wrong, kind of in a silly way. Like you don't understand how this is getting screwed up. You'd think that, to use the phrase, in 2017 that we would have figured this kind of stuff out, especially in regards to video game design. But yeah, it just has like a million little tiny things wrong with it. That said, the game itself is absolutely fantastic. If you can get past all of that, or if you're able to, I guess, like engage at a level that it's just inconsequential. A lot of the things, because like James and I have had conversations about some elements of the story and the plot outside of the podcast. It is not nearly as contrived of a situation as it seems. Kind of like one of the things James brought up was complaining about is you just happen to be in this place where there's all this ancient alien tech that can just magically fix these planets that you're on. Yeah, there's actually a damn good reason for that. And there's just a whole bunch of things like that where the game really, if I were to give it a failing, it's that the game actually doesn't explain itself in a meaningful way at all until like the last quarter of its playthrough, when it all just kind of starts to come together and you start getting the revelations and understanding why things are the way that they are and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, this is amazing. I would have really loved to have known this earlier so that I would have had something to actually attach and engage to. And I can totally see how a lot of people feel that way with it. But at the end of the day, it was another Mass Effect game. It was very much a Mass Effect game through and through. And if they can work out these kinks and fix their shit, as it were, it could even become a much, much better game, a few weeks or a couple months from now. So if anybody hasn't picked it up yet, actually holding off might be the right move here. They've already patched in a couple graphical improvements that have made things much, much nicer on the facial animations front. And I'm sure that the DLC will bring some stuff in as well. Anybody who's listened and talked to me knows, however, that I am incredibly passionate about the Mass Effect franchise. I love it dearly. So after completing the game, I wrote them a 6-page letter and emailed it to them about all the shit they need to fix with their game.
Nerd.
Because I was just like, what did you do? Why is this hard? Why are all of your menus absolutely hostile to actual user, interface option? I mean, it's unbelievable. Like I said, it's little tiny things that you would just think wouldn't be a big deal because they shouldn't be happening, and yet they are. One of the things, for example, is you get this character, Sam, and he's like this little artificial intelligence that's in your head, and he gives you information about the environment. And there's this one planet that you go to that's incredibly cold. Like, it's so cold it will kill you if you're out in the environment for too long. Now, the gameplay mechanic is that there are safe spaces. There are like heaters and other things all scattered about the place that you can stand next to refresh your life support before you move on. It's actually not annoying. It's fine. What is annoying is Sam constantly telling you this: Pathfinder, it's cold. Pathfinder, the temperature is stabilized. Pathfinder, it's cold. And it's like every time you go in and out of these places, and like some of these you're literally just like zigzagging between, so it's like, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot. It's like, Sam, I've been on this planet for 7 hours. I know. I totally know. And then like you'll have moments where your party members will be talking to you, and then Sam will be like, he'll interrupt it to say, Pathfinder, it's cold. It's like, really, man? And then you'll go to a plot critical area, and Sam will start telling you about his readings on the terrain, and this is important stuff you want to know, and he will interrupt himself to then say, Pathfinder, it's cold. And you're like,
Pathfinder, I'm detecting resources in this area. Use your mining scanner to see if there's anything of worth. I know. I just opened it, which procs you to do that message every time I open it.
Yeah,
of course I know I can scan for minerals because I just opened it to scan for minerals.
Oh my god, yeah, that is amazing. It's like it's little things like that. Like they put it in there, it worked, and then they didn't double check to make sure that it wouldn't drive you crazy after 100 hours.
Well, it's like I said from the beginning. Like I've worked on like piddling, making little RPGs on my own. And one of the most vital systems is what's called an event trigger system.
Yes.
Where you keep track of, hey, if this person starts a quest, you need to flag that with a trigger so that when the game checks next time you talk to them, they don't just offer you the quest over and over and they say something different. There is no event triggering in the open world events that don't have anything to do with the story. Anything that's out in the open, there's no triggering. There's nobody sitting down to go, oh, did we already tell the player this? It's just like, nope, just trigger it every time the prerequisite is fulfilled.
Yeah, and oh boy, does it show. And it's funny because, like I said, if you can actually look past that, the actual gameplay is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with the actual gameplay, but listening to this guy tell you every single time that something has changed that you already are very aware of is just absolutely incredible. Yeah, and you just kind of got to wonder, like, where did the oversight come from in that situation? Part of it is the BioWare branch that produced that game. It's their first full-fledged game.
It's Montreal, right?
Yeah, Montreal, not Edmonton. The thing is, they were actually founded during Mass Effect 3, and they produced Mass Effect 3's multiplayer, the entire Omega DLC, numerous scenes, and a lot of its staff worked on some of the loyalty missions in Mass Effect 2. So they know what they're doing. And
so basically, we're in a situation like what would happen with BioShock, where the sequel was made by the people that did the multiplayer.
Yeah, kind of. But I would actually liken it more to the Halo franchise in Studio 343. Yeah. Well, I mean, because they basically think of like, it's in-house, so it's not quite the same. But in 343's situation, Bungie had just made Halo 3 and ODST, and they were done. And Microsoft is like, well, we can't let our franchise die. So they create an entire company. And 343 is actually a reference to something from the franchise. I'm not as familiar with it as you would think I would be. I only ever really played Halo's multiplayer with friends extensively. But having gone from ODST's multiplayer to Halo 4's multiplayer, you could tell that there was kind of like this restraint. Like 343 was afraid to make it not Halo. Like they weren't willing to put their own mark on it in any way whatsoever that would be too extreme. Like they were willing to modify certain aesthetics, make some tweaks to balance here and there or what have you, but it was like anything that could even marginally be considered not Halo-esque was just not done at all. It was very, very trepidatious. And I feel like the Montreal studio kind of had a similar challenge where they had to make a Mass Effect game that was a Mass Effect game. And they kind of just used the cheat sheet from Edmonton, as it were, to build their game. And I think in the process, just a lot of the little tiny details got lost. Like James was saying, there's little trigger things that aren't being done. There's menu interface things that aren't being addressed very well. And it's really awkward because if you compare it to Dragon Age Inquisition, which had its own set of problems, Dragon Age Inquisition, all of the things that it does wrong, Mass Effect Andromeda does right. So like they did learn from their mistakes, but they didn't actually take care of any of like the little micro things. Like the macro gameplay, spot on, fine. But like the little micro user interface and how you interact with the game and all that kind of stuff, they just did not do that very well. Also, again, other things that were just strange. Like it has the worst not user interface. It has the worst character creator I've ever seen, which is just bizarre, especially when you consider Dragon Age Inquisition has such a great character creator. You've got character creators like Fallout 4's, which are just unbelievably awesome. And then you compare it to even the previous Mass Effect games, and the previous Mass Effect games had upwards as 4 times as many customizational features for your character. And it's one of those things where I'm just looking at it going, what happened? Like, somebody somewhere messed up. But like I said earlier, BioWare is on the case, as it were. They are correcting these problems. They're getting to it, which is partly why I wrote my 6-page letter, because they actually went to Twitter and just put out a call and said, we want feedback. Tell us what to do. And I'm just like, I am on this. I got this. It's like, believe me, I just spent 125 hours with this thing. I know what it needs.
And let us know if you actually get any direct feedback. I'd be curious.
I'm actually not too worried about that. I'm not too worried about that because one of the things about stuff like that is if they actually do implement the stuff that you talk about, they need to not actually specifically address where it came from in order to, dodge potential legal problems. Even though I would never sue or claim that they had stolen an idea from me. That's just not how I operate. Sure. But the lawyers don't know that.
True.
And also, you don't want a whole gaming company becoming some serial killer's Jodie Foster.
Yes.
You don't want Helter Skelter on BioWare.
And there are little things that I threw in there that I've wanted since like the original Mass Effect trilogy. Like one of the things that's actually driven me nuts ever since Mass Effect 1 is that there's no way to know if a character has something new to say to you other than to actually just walk up to them and say hello, which creates very awkward moments where you're like, hello, hi Shepard, goodbye, bye Shepard, and you're like, whoa, what happened there? And it's because they have nothing new to say, but you don't know that until you talk to them.
Yep.
So
I actually an interesting point about that I've been playing JRPG that it uses a system where if someone has something to say to you, there's like a little smiley face bubble in front of the character, and then after you talk to them, they've said it goes into like a neutral face bubble. But if there's something important that you'll learn about the world or the story, it actually puts a little green exclamation above that NPC, so you walk up and talk to them.
Right,
and it's very elegant.
That's exactly what I was kind of alluding to, was in not in the other games really, but in this latest Andromeda, there's a very prominent kind of like circular icon that appears whenever you can interact with something. And I was just thinking to myself, why isn't there like a tiny blue exclamation mark that pops up along with that off to the side, like in the lower right corner of the icon or something, to indicate that, hey, if you talk to this person, they have something new to say to you, even if it's just like a little bit, right? Like there's no indicator of that. And I just feel like, it's been well over a decade since the first game came out. How has this not been fixed? And that's also one of the things where, like I said, I feel like they were too scared to change the formula. So even the little tiny things that the original games did wrong, and the trilogy is not perfect by any measure. I'm actually one of those people that will point out like all of the millions of flaws with it and make people angry and still love the game. But they just didn't fix these things, and then they compound on it with new problems and so on and so forth and blah 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 blah. But when it comes to like the more meta conversation, people are like, oh, I don't find these characters interesting. They're actually very interesting. Take the time to get to know them. I don't find the story all that engaging. Actually, the story's pretty damn interesting. Take the time to get through it. One of the things I told my brother quite often, actually almost immediately, after I spent a couple days with it, was I realized that the game's biggest problem might be that it expects you to play it. Like, they don't actually earn your, I guess you could say, like, devotion towards seeing the plot through. The plot is structured in such a way, and the character relationships are structured in such a way, they kind of expect you to just go through it because you bought the game.
Yeah, it's a weird. The narrative structure is a hindsight structure. You don't
very
know what's
much.
going on until you've passed a milestone, and then they turn back and go, "You see that? You see what you just did back there? This is when that happened."
Very much. Very much so. And yeah, I don't think it works in, like, holding your attention, but like I said, once you actually finish the game, like when you take it together as a singular cohesive piece, you're just kind of like, man, that was great. And then at the end of it, you realize, oh my goodness, we have, like, the best launching platform for a new franchise ever. Like, if this was a good reboot, it did the two things that Mass Effect had to not do in order to continue on. It had to not take place in the Milky Way galaxy, because if you've played the other Mass Effect games, you know that based on your choices, entire races may have been wiped out. Certain cultural events may have never occurred, and everyone might be dead. Or they might be alive and kind of upset, or they might be alive and living in nirvana. It's up to you, right? It's completely up to how you ended that game. So there's no feasible way that you can continue the franchise in the Milky Way galaxy. The other thing you have to do is, while you're establishing a new platform for the franchise to move forward, you have to not introduce a galaxy-wide threat that will wipe out all life in an instant unless you defeat it within 3 games. Right? So they do a lot of laying the groundwork for a franchise. And while the story has a conclusion and everything wraps up very nicely, there's a lot of that galaxy left open for interpretation still. You don't really... You deal with the bad guy, but you don't, like, deal with what race he's from or the empire he represents or anything like that. They're still out there somewhere. You don't know anything about them. There's all kinds of stuff going on that you just don't learn anything about, that you'll have to deal with in, like, future DLC, future games, what have you. And it's great that there's now this wonderful, like, springboard to go forward with. So we've talked about this a lot, but I could probably do an entire episode about how I feel about this game, so I'm really trying to hold it in. I'm not kidding, man. All right, I have feelings. Okay, I have serious feelings about this game, good and bad. I could sum it up nicely and just move on from here by saying that when I beat that game, I had the biggest shit grin on my face for, like, the entire day. And I've just been resisting the urge to play it immediately again, because I feel like if I just wait a little bit, some stuff will get patched, and I'll probably have a much better experience in a couple months. So, great game, all said and done. Can't recommend it enough. Just, I would wait a while.
I'm just gonna start a spin-off show called Robert, How Was Your Week?
You should. It would save us some time.
All right, so our topic for this week is on the opposite spectrum of the expository suppository we just enjoyed. What is it about, Veet?
Right, so this episode is about one of my favorite all-time television shows. And yes, it's animated, but I very easily would put it up in my top 10 television shows of all time. And this show is called Samurai Jack. So Samurai Jack first aired in August 2001. I probably didn't discover it till about 2003, 2004 maybe. It ran for 4 years for a total of 52 episodes on Cartoon Network. It's created by Gendy Tata. I knew I was going to stumble on that last name. I just knew it.
Start that engine again.
Tartakovsky. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. Tartakovsky, and from now on, I'm going to refer to him as Gendy. So I'm just going to screw up his name. Who came to popularity by creating Dexter's Laboratory in 1996 and Powerpuff Girls in 1998. Now, I know of those
Both
two programs.
amazing shows.
Well, yes, okay. I will I will acknowledge that they were very popular, very well received. I certainly remember my daughter, who at this point in time, at about 2003, 2004, is about 4 years of age, 4.5 years of age, and she's devouring Cartoon Network, more so than she's devouring the Disney Channel. But she wasn't a stranger to the Disney Channel either. So I acknowledge that, but I could just not get into either of those two programs. And I can't put my finger on it other than I found the dialogue irritating. It was not what was being said, it was how it was delivered. I just found it grating and too rapid, too staccato for my liking. And it's just...
So basically, you hated DD and Mojo Jojo.
Well, I can't say I've ever watched either of those two programs.
No, they were exactly. They were characters in
Right.
Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff
Right.
Girls, respectively.
Right, okay. So there you go. I didn't pay close enough attention to know even who the characters were in the program. There you go. But though, like, my daughter tried on numerous occasions to go, Dad, sit down with me and watch these programs. I think at best I got through one Powerpuff Girls episode. And I will acknowledge that they were good role models for girls, but it just drove me nanas. It just drove me bonkers. I just couldn't do it.
Well, then, it's obvious you haven't seen the best episode of Dexter's Laboratory, where he tries to use hypnocratic method to teach himself French while he's asleep. And the tape gets stuck on the phrase omelette du fromage, and it replaces the entire English language in his brain with omelette du fromage, and that's all he can say for an entire episode. It's just omelette du fromage, omelette du fromage, omelette.
It's so great. It leads to world peace.
There you
Yeah,
go.
because
Yeah,
he's like taking a test at school, and he's like, omelette du fromage. That's the correct answer. It's the highest score we've ever had on this test.
Okay.
He's at the UN. He's at the UN. Omelette du fromage. And then, of course, the episode ends with him going to the door of his lab and going, omelette du fromage. Password not accepted. Omelette du fromage. Password not accepted.
Self-destruct sequence activated.
All right. Okay. Okay. You can keep it. That's fine. It's all good. So on the strength of these two programs, he then creates a animated series which is almost completely opposite to these two programs. Gendy himself receives a lot of acclaim and awards for these animated series. So much so that on the strength of these three programs, Dexter's Laboratory, Powerpuff Girls, and Samurai Jack, he's approached by Lucasfilm to make an animated Star Wars series called Clone Wars.
So good.
Oh my
Yes.
god,
Yeah.
so good.
Now, it's not to be confused with Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is a totally different animated series, and again, I believe, a very good series to watch. But he was approached by Lucasfilm to make basically 1-minute episodes, Star Wars episodes. And his team took it away and they mulled it through, and they went back to Lucasfilm and said, we can't do 1 minute. We would like to do 3-minute episodes. And they said, yes, go for it. So what he then produced was 25 3-minute episodes of Clone Wars. I've got to not put the D in there. So this is the period between basically Star Wars Episode 3 and Star Wars Episode 4.
No.
Starts
2 and
after
3.
3.
That's when the
2 and
Clone Wars-
3. Sorry, you're right. 2 and 3. After 2, before 3. Yes,
There's
you're
a
right.
Death Star in there somewhere.
Is there? And And then,
Well, no, I meant the
and
original ones you had there.
And then on the strength of that, he makes another 5 12-minute episodes for a total of about 2.5 hours. And if you go to YouTube, you'll actually see this. The whole lot merged together into one film. It's about 2.5 hours. And like my colleagues here on the show have just exclaimed, it is exceptional.
Yeah, I own it on DVD. It's really good.
Yeah, it is good. It is very good. And the art style and the storytelling is just superb. So,
And if you ever wanted to watch Yoda take out an entire spaceship with just his mind, you can witness this moment.
There you go. Yes, you can. So it just goes to show some of the pedigree of Genndy Tartakovsky. There you go. I said it. Woohoo. So let's talk about Samurai Jack a little bit. And some of the bit more of the background information is it's basically a story of two main characters, a good guy and a bad guy. And the two main voice actors in it, Samurai Jack is played by Phil Lamar, who's a prolific VO actor in numerous animated shorts and TV series and movies. In fact, he's even appeared as a voice actor in 2 of the animated series we've talked about on this show. The first one being Justice League. And Robert, what did he play on Justice League?
He's the Green Lantern, as well as a bunch of other things.
Yep, that's right. And, of course, he was on Futurama. James.
He was Hermes Conrad and a lot of other voices, and people will probably recognize him the most as being the poorest chum that gets shot in the face in Pulp Fiction.
Yes, that's the guy. So, yes, he's had a bit of an acting career as well, but they are generally all or mostly bit parts. I think he appeared.
Yeah, anybody who even paid attention to Film Lamar would have seen him on Mad TV.
Right. And he appeared on Friends and you name it. He was all over the place. But exceptional VO actor and superb for the part of Samurai Jack. Now, in contrast to that, that's the good guy. The bad guy is voiced by Meiko Iwamatsu. Japanese,
rest in peace.
Yes. Japanese VO actor and actor as well. He plays Aku, the bad guy. Aku in Japanese means evil. And Meiko is one of these actors, along with the actor, who was the actor that played Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid?
Pat Morita?
Pat Morita. He was one of your 2 actors. If you needed a bit part Japanese actor in your movie, it was one of these 2 guys. In your TV series, you needed a Japanese character. It was one of these 2 guys. And Meiko voiced this character of Aku superbly. He's just like, he encompassed what was wonderful about Aku. And we'll get into a bit more detail about that. So what is Samurai Jack all about? The series follows Jack, an unnamed samurai sent through time to a dystopian future ruled by the tyrannical, shape-shifting demon Aku. Jack quests to travel back in time and defeat Aku before he can take over the world. And that's the quote that's basically quoted at the start of the original 4 seasons that started back in 2001. The series premiere shows Jack's father describe to his son the rise of Aku, the creation of his magical samurai sword, and then his use of it to defeat Aku. It is at this time we see Aku rise from his banishment. So when this first episode takes place, you see Aku rise from his slumber, so to speak, and start destroying the world around him. Jack sees his father being killed by Aku, but not before he and his mother are forced to flee. As part of the arrangement between Jack's mother and father, if such an event was to happen, Jack is sent all around the world to receive training from some of the experts in their particular fighting skills and combat skills that is traditional to them and in their part of the world. He returns, now a young man ready to battle Aku, and just as he's about to plunge his father's magical sword into Aku and defeat him, Aku opens a portal in time, sending Jack into a future where Aku's evil is law.
This episode, so what we're describing, Veet just read the synopsis, completely, you can't even tell, what about that would make it so phenomenal. And it is a single word: minimalism.
Yep.
It is the foundation of this show. If you watch this first episode, it's that description of Jack's father describing what's happening happens. Then Aku attacks, and dialogue almost completely drops out of the show. It's Aku, the sword, my son. It's one-word sentences. And then it's like, mother, the plan that we talked about. And all this training that Veet described, from the moment he's set on a ship and sails off, there is no more speech.
Yep.
The moment his mother hands him to the captain of the ship, there is no words in this show for 7 minutes.
Yeah, and actually, Gendy have been practicing this for quite a while. There is my personal favorite episode of Dexter's Lab. No one speaks the entire episode. In the episode, Dexter's in his lab, just doing his thing, lab stuff, and then a light bulb goes and breaks, and he just looks at it, grumbles, grabs a ladder, goes up, unscrews the light bulb, inspects it, and then he gets down, walks to the store, has a few misadventures on his way to the store, slams his money on the counter, buys a light bulb, goes back into the lab, screws the light bulb in, goes back down, starts doing lab stuff, and then another light bulb breaks. And he goes, and the episode ends. Not a word was spoken. So, he'd been practicing this whole minimalist, toned down, lack of dialogue style for quite a while. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but I do recall that there also was an episode of Powerpuff Girls that was quite similar, where he tried that again. Right. And the key, though, is that unlike those two shows, which I love dearly, he took something that he was experimenting with and turned it into the entire basis upon which this show is structured.
Yeah, and it's not just the audio. The visuals for this training, he starts off on the sea with the captain, who he's then introduced to a Middle Eastern sultan.
Yep.
And the sultan is who takes him all the way down to Africa. And this transition is beautiful. It's just Jack and the sultan on a horse. They ride into the distance. They become black silhouettes. The desert, the environment of the desert is just one color. Sky and desert are brown, the same exact color. The only distinguishing feature on the screen is a single dark brown line going straight across the screen. The transition from that to the African Sahara, it remains the same brown with the same dividing line showing the horizon, except small little shrubs appear. And then a giraffe, a small little hut underneath a tree. Very, very minimalist. No joke. Literally, the only thing defining an environment on the screen sometimes is a single line.
What we have here is basically the first 3 episodes of the show, and it creates the introduction movie, about 60 minutes worth. And what James and Robert have described is a highlight and a theme that carries on through each and every episode, and I'll get into a bit more about what's stuck out for me particularly. So that's the first 3 episodes. The next 49 episodes basically show this lone wolf in a dystopian future on his hero's journey and adventures to track down Aku, find a way back in time so it can defeat him before any of this future, this evil future, this Aku's future, has taken place. Now, Jack, everybody calls him Jack. Jack is actually unnamed. We don't actually know his first name. We actually don't know his name entirely. The reason why he's called Jack is that when he's eventually thrown into the portal, lands in the future, he lands in sort of the ghetto area of this city, and he's surrounded by a group of youths. And it's basically the slang of that group, those guys in that time frame, to basically refer to anybody in a common term as Jack. The same way we might use
Apparently.
mate or bro or dude. That was that language. Everything they spoke to him referred to would use the term Jack.
Yeah, it's like apparently linguistics is cyclical, and we're back into the 1970s. It's like, hey, Jack, man, that was crazy. Did you see that when that Jack, he chopped that car in half. Man, Jack, you crazy.
Yep. There you go.
Are they going to call him a jive turkey next?
So that's how he becomes known as Jack. So Jack is dressed in the white kimono. Quiet, unassuming, and peace-loving. Wants nothing more to go back in time and be back with his parents in the childhood he remembers before Aku has shown up. Because of his trustworthy nature, he's driven to defending others around him. And he's constantly getting it. His preference is not to fight. His choice is not to fight first. He will defend himself, of course, but inevitably he comes across somebody in distress, somebody in need, and or somebody under attack, and James, Jack can't help himself. There you go. Pull out your samurai sword, mate. I need some help. He can't help himself but come to their defense, come to their assistance. And if that more or less describes every single episode, and you think, well, what's there to see? But, and I'll get more into this. There are different techniques, there are different styles. Gendy and his team don't rest on their laurels going from one episode to the next. It worked in one, so we'll do it in the next. They were constantly creating variations on the different themes of the show. Jack is modelled on a young Clint Eastwood. And once I had seen and read that, I looked back and went, I could see that. There you go. He's modelled after a young Clint Eastwood. Let's talk about Aku. Aku's all-powerful, shape-shifting, magical entity who is enjoyable to watch because of the humour that is incorporated into his character. He is evil, but not evil. It's probably the best way I can describe him. He's cynical, rhetorical, sarcastic, he's dry. And as much as you want Jack to defeat him, never, not once, do you object to Aku being on screen. He embodies the humour of the show. Jack, like I said, is quiet. He just wants to go about his mission to get back in time and defeat Aku. Aku is just like, I'm more powerful. The world is mine. What's this guy? Why does he want to keep harassing me? Why can't any of my minions do anything about it? And the humor is just engrossing. It really is dry. It's cynical, but you just can't help but laugh. Or Aku puts a smile on your face pretty much every time his character appears on screen. So let's talk about some of the reasons why Samurai Jack appeals to me so much. I love the intro theme. That sort of hip-hop created by will.i.am, for me, I think it's just awesome, and it just gets my blood pumping and ready for the show each and every time, and it's distinctive. Every time I hear it, I just want to go, whatcha? And just, I'm ready for some more Samurai Jack. The artwork, and I'll let Robert speak to the artwork here, because I'm sure he can describe it far better than I can. And it's just, for me, simplified, like James was talking about in the first 3 episodes. It is simple but so effective. There's not too many colors. Every scene looks like a painting. Every scene looks clean and as basic as you need, but with enough detail to portray the story. And James mentioned about the minimalism. The minimalism about this program is the standout feature. In each episode, there are periods of silence, or just background sounds, or just some basic music. In general, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of dialogue throughout these shows, except when either Aku appears on screen or one of his minions appears on screen. Actually, Phil Lamar reckons it's the best gig he's ever had, because as a main character, he actually speaks so little. And it's just, the best way to describe it is just that less is more. What he's able to portray, convey in periods of silence. And you'll get 2, 3, 4 minutes of silence. Or you'll get a minute of a scene where Jack is walking through a field of snow, and for 1 minute all you hear is the crunch of his clogs shuffling through the snow. Just to portray that he is on this long journey, that he's just been walking through this field for hours, and he's just like crunch, 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 as he's just walking through this. And there might be a wisp of a wind in the background. And it's just like, in contrast, it's just so different to whatever else I was watching at that time. And in general, most other animated series, this is very unique in that perspective. The music is great. There's a lot of variety. There's a lot of techno. There's a lot of hip hop. There's traditional Indian music. There's traditional Japanese music. And it all helps create the scene, the atmosphere, the emotions that is going on. That is, again, not being created by dialogue. It's created by the sound or the lack of sound. And of course, in contrast to that, you get Aku, who just never shuts up. He's just like, it's always about Aku. It's always about me. And everybody needs to kill the samurai. And it's just in sheer contrast. And lastly, it's the action scenes. The action scenes offset the stillness and the quietness, because the action scenes are brilliantly portrayed, very fast, again relying on a lot of sight and sound to create the action without the dialogue. They use a lot of split screening, So the screen will be cut into 3, and each one will show a slice of the action that sort of portrays the movement and the progress of the action that's taking place. And sometimes the action scenes will will last 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes. Now, what's great about the action scenes, and one of the reasons why I say that each episode does vary from the previous, is because they spent a lot of time and attention focusing on different combat skills, different fighting styles. Sort of to portray, like James had mentioned, Jack being sent off around the world to learn the different combat skills and fighting skills that each area is sort of has expertise in. And so they would specifically, each show, focus on a specific type of combat, a specific type of fighting skills, so that they could create different action scenes going from episode to episode. While those 49 episodes are more or less the same thing, they're different. They're different visually, they're different in the cinematography, they're different in the sounds, and again, they're different in the fighting styles. Now, I can't help but watch Samurai Jack without it taking me back to my childhood, and it reminds me of a TV program that I actually enjoyed and adored as a kid, and that was Kung Fu. You guys ever come across Kung Fu?
In what context?
Or have you ever seen an episode?
No. Poor David Carradine.
So yeah, pretty much. Kung Fu is a 70s television program. Tells the story of a Chinese man played by a white American, David Carradine, who arrives in America in search of his brother. And he sets off on, again, this sort of lone wolf journey around the United States looking for his brother. Has a very similar style and persona to Samurai Jack. And Gendy actually admits that, in part, the creation of this character and this show is based on his love of the Kung Fu television series. Very quiet, very unassuming, very philosophical, harping back to his childhood and his training and his teachings to get him through this foreign land and these foreign people and these situations that he comes across. And again, for a TV show, it does have a degree of minimalism. It does have a degree of silence. Again, you see scenes of I actually don't know what his character's name is. Grasshopper. I know his master called him Grasshopper, but I don't actually know if he had an actual name. He may have been nameless as well. And you'll see scenes of David Carradine walking through fields as he's going to the next destination in search of his brother. And again, it had, a bit of kung fu action. I don't know if it was great to actually see. It was pretty basic. There's certainly no Jackie Chan or Bruce Lee. But it was enough. There was enough action, and I guess it was more, for me as a kid, the difference in what I was watching. It was just in contrast. The action scenes were in complete contrast to the other action scenes that were being portrayed on the other 70s television programs that I was watching. So I've always been a fan of Kung Fu. It is actually one of the very few programs that, if I'm flicking through the television and I come across, I'll actually sit and watch the whole program. Now, I've talked about a bunch of 70s television here on this podcast. I've mentioned Happy Days and Knight Rider, which is an 80s program, Mission Impossible, Star Trek, you name it. I'll come across those. If I come across those on the television as I'm sort of flicking through, I might stop for a minute, get a minute's worth of nostalgia built up, and then I'll go, I'll move on now. But if I actually come across an episode of Kung Fu, and I'm not saying this is great television, it just hits a bone with me, I will actually stop and watch the rest of the show. And it probably explains why I have such a passion for Samurai Jack. Now, this show has got me in trouble with my wife twice. Once originally, when the original 4 seasons came out, and 13 years later, once they finally released the 5th and final season, I got in trouble with my wife again. And I'll talk about each of these. First, I'll talk about the first time I got into trouble. Like I said, Sam was about 4.5. I caught this program. I honestly don't remember. Cartoon Network may have been on in the background. I may have caught the ad, or I may have just turned on Cartoon Network and it was just sort of there, halfway through an episode, and it just hooked me in. And I just grabbed my daughter, sat her on the sofa, tucked her into my side and said, "We need to watch this." And Sam was hooked, hook, line and sinker. And she loved this thing right from the get-go. My wife walks into the room and she catches a glimpse of one of the action scenes. And Samurai Jack with his magical sword is just hewing his way through a whole bunch of bodies. Now, when I say bodies, this was a kids program aimed at a kids market, needing kids sensibilities. So blood was never portrayed. And all the deaths were of robots. So Aku in his future decides he's basically going to build a robotic world. And his bidding, other than a handful of live minions, is predominantly done by machines and robots. So that when you see Samurai Jack in most of these action scenes, he's fighting machines. And he's literally hewing his way through all these machines, slashing and cutting. And these machines fly open, burst open, and they will squirt black oil. So no blood is ever seen on these original first 4 seasons. But my wife looks at this and says, "What the hell are you watching with my daughter?" And I said, "It's all good. It's all fine. These are all machines. Not a single human is harmed in one of these episodes. Besides, it's a good way for me to teach my daughter the difference between good and evil." And that was my justification. And she just huffed and walked off. She was not the least bit amused. And I think back now and I'm going, well, I could have been Robert's parents and let him watch Terminator at the age of 4. But no, I was watching Samurai Jack.
It was younger than 4, man.
Was it younger than 4? I thought it was 4. There you go. But Sam and I really bonded over this program. And we loved it. We really did. And Sam actually claims that she gets a lot of her appreciation of art. And if she was here, she could rabbit off a whole heap of different artistic terminology and phrases that she learnt by watching this episode. Of course, it sort of goes over my head. I appreciate the beauty that I'm seeing on the screen. I'm not necessarily appreciating the style that's gone into creating what we're watching and appreciating. So that was the first time, and I'll mention the second time I get in trouble a little later. So yes, so I taught Sam the difference between good and evil with the help of Samurai Jack. I'll talk about my favourite episode. And my favourite episode, apart from the original 3 episodes, which are the the premiere movie, is Jack and the Scotsman. And Scotsman is a warrior who wields an enchanted sword of his own. And the way they meet up, again, it's one of those scenes where Jack is just walking. There's very little sound, maybe a wisp of wind, but the screen is filled with thick fog. And he's just walking and walking through this thick fog. So basically it's him and this screen of misty white. He approaches a swing bridge, an old wooden swing bridge, of which you can't see the end of it because it's shrouded in fog. After a few seconds of contemplation, Jack sets foot onto the swing bridge. And again, you get another minute of Jack's feet just clip-clopping on the wooden bridge. Clip-clop, clip-clop. And you see nothing other than the immediate few meters of the bridge, and looking forward, it's just fog. And this goes on for a minute. Just clip-clop, 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 clip-clop. It's never-ending bridge. It just doesn't, there's no end in sight. I'm assuming about halfway over the bridge, he encounters the Scotsman. Now, the Scotsman is this big, burly character, half his teeth missing, and in the most brogue of Scottish accents that you can possibly imagine. I can't help but listen to this guy and immediately think of Billy Connolly, who would have been great to have done the voiceover for this. I can assure you. Now, the problem is it's a very narrow bridge. The Scotsman is quite rotund and takes up the whole width. And Jack politely asks to be excused so he can get around him. And this starts off an argument between them, because neither of them are prepared to give an inch on this tiny little narrow bridge to sort of accommodate the other person. So they start to argue. And the Scotsman delivers this wonderful 23-word, 20-second long insult to Jack. And I've actually got it here, and I'm going to give it a try. And I won't do it with a Scottish accent, but I probably will break into a bit of an accent because I can't help myself. And it goes like this. It goes, "What do you think of that, Mr. Pajama-wearing, basket-face, slipper-wielding, clipe-drip blatchy, gather-upping blate more, blithering gomeril Jesse, oaf-looking schooner, neaf, plucky, shan, milk-drinking, soy-faced, shilpit, min-mothed, snivelling, worm-eyed, hootenblah, vilstucci, calibric-tatty." I don't know what half of those words mean, but it's just delivered perfectly. And Jack is just standing there stone-faced. It has little to no effect on Jack. And he, this whole time, as the Scotsman is trying to sort of win an argument verbally with the Samurai Jack, it's just having no effect. It's just like water off a duck's back. It's like Jack looks at him as if to say, "Is that all you've got?" So they go into battle. They each pull out their swords, and again starts this 3 or 4 minute sword fight of these two hewing at each other on this narrow bridge. How they haven't hacked at the ropes or the wooden slats underneath them, I'll never know. And you see them sort of like, one might sort of gain 3 meters one way, and then the other will gain 3 meters the other way. And there's this sort of backwards and forwards of these two fighting and it going nowhere. They are in swordsmanship, they are equal to each other. Then all of a sudden you hear mechanical clanking. And from both sides of the bridge arrives Aku's robots, because they both have bounties on their head. And once they realize that, they realize they're actually on the same side. So they decide to team up to fight off these Aku's robots that come to destroy them. And what starts then is basically this development of a friendship. And it's the only friend that Jack actually makes. And the only repeating character in the whole of the 52 episodes. He actually comes back another 2 or 3 times, if I remember correctly. 2 more episodes. This is as close as Jack gets to forming a relationship with anybody, other than the original relationship he had with his parents. This show is critically acclaimed, wins multiple awards. Nothing but good can be spoken about this program, except all of a sudden the show ends abruptly.
Oh man.
And
I just gotta jump in and say this bothered the hell out of me because I'm just like, for the longest time I was like, is there more of this show? There's been reruns for quite a while now.
Yep, exactly. And it literally, they came to 52 episodes and boom, it's done. The last episode is just another typical episode where Jack comes to the defense of a baby. This time there is no conclusion, there is no Jack getting back, there is no defeat of Aku. It just ends. And I did my best to try and research what the hell happened, and the only thing I can come up with is that yes, towards the end of the season, the 4th season, it was starting to lose ratings. Cartoon Network promised Genndy a 52 episode contract, and that's what he got. Now, Genndy may have thought that he may have been able to negotiate a continuation, but Cartoon Network said, "Nope, we're done, contract's over, we'll just move on, thank you very much."
Well, they had a full run for syndication.
True.
You know, they had everything that they needed to just keep. Like I said, I was watching the show. I'm just like, these are a lot of reruns because it's one of those things. I mean, it's a product of its time. I mean, you're talking about 2004. TV was done very differently back then than what we've grown accustomed to over the last decade or so.
True. Very true.
And the serialized kind of syndication format was everything. And so once they had their 52 episodes for syndication, from a strictly managerial standpoint that gave no F's about actual content, they're just like, oh, we have all the episodes we need from you. We're done. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yep. And that you're absolutely right. That's what happened. And I get to the very last episode, or I eventually track down the last episode, or I identify which is the last episode, and I just sit there and I went, what the F? There's no conclusion. There's just Jack, and he's just walking off into the distance again. I couldn't understand it. Now, since then, and 13 years have passed since the last episode was made. Since then, Genndy has tried to... Well, initially, he tried to negotiate a final movie, another 60 minutes, so he could complete the storyline. And they said no.
And I can tell you why they said no.
The Powerpuff Girls movie bomb.
Yes.
Well, I haven't heard this, but go on.
Okay, the Powerpuff Girls movie bombs horrifically. And it does so for a couple of reasons. The first is that the movie comes out as Powerpuff Girls is on the wane. So, I mean, it reached peak popularity at that time. You may have noticed it too has come back because the fan base never died.
Yes.
Right. The ratings may have dropped, but everybody who loved Powerpuff Girls, and I'm right there with them, never stopped loving Powerpuff Girls. Now, when that movie came out, and I actually did go see this in theaters, and that movie came out, I was terribly disappointed because it was exactly what I thought it would be from the commercials, which was a retelling of what was already a 3-part episode in the series proper. They had already told the origin story of the Powerpuff Girls as a 3-parter, and then this movie was just a 90-minute story of the origin of the Powerpuff Girls, and it wasn't actually that different.
Right.
There was no reason to go. Now, you can look at all of the various reasons why that movie fails. All Cartoon Network sees, and all anybody with the checkbook sees is, well, we let Tartakovsky make something and it didn't make money for us.
Yes.
Now, I don't know why that movie is a retelling of a bunch of episodes that have already been done. I have no concept as to why they went that route. Well, I mean, Warner Brothers had already done something similar with the Batman Mask of the Phantasm film, where it was made for television, and then literally at the 11th hour, they were like, you know what? No, theatrical release, this is really good. And so you have this 4:3 aspect ratio movie in theaters that is like, it's made for TV.
Yeah.
It is not widescreen. and they're putting it up there. And you know what? Damn good film. And it made some money. But the key thing to that was it had absolutely no there was no basis in like trying to catch you up on any of these characters. They just threw you in there. Now, in a really backwards way, yeah, the movie is an origin story for Batman, the Joker, and the Phantasm. But even then, it's an origin story that only works on the basis that you know who these people are from the series already. Because the origins are all told in flashbacks.
Right.
It's actually a very complicated film, but they had the guts to do it. And then you go to Powerpuff Girls, and for whatever reason, they just weren't willing to make like a super episode.
Right. Sure.
Right. They were like, tell an origin story. And it's like, that's exactly what we didn't need. So, yeah. So Tartakovsky, I know he was arguing for a Samurai Jack movie, but he was never going to get that after the Powerpuff Girls.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that. That helps put that a bit more in perspective for me. So there was that original effort to try and make a final movie. There was there has been talk of a live action Samurai Jack movie, so much so that J.J. Abrams expressed specific interest in doing so.
No, he can't do that, all right? He has to make my Half-Life movie.
Well, there's a small problem with that. As much as he is interested and keen on making a Samurai Jack movie, these 2 low-budget movies come along that take his attention, unfortunately, and they were Star Trek and Star Wars. So they got in the way of him creating a live-action Samurai Jack movie. Poo-poo those movies. That was basically it for 13 years, with a lot of fans sort of going, what happened to Jack? What happened to Jack? In 2005, they make... 2005... No, sorry, a bit later that. About 2011, excuse me. 2011, they produce a 20-part comic book series. Again, following that, continuing on the storyline from basically where it left off, using that same artwork. How could you not? But at the end of the 20 episodes, it actually doesn't offer a conclusion either. It offers sort of an alternative ending. It's sort of a jump to the future with a possible ending. Not really sure how we got there. And I think they were keen not to conclude the Samurai Jack story in the comic book form, because I think Genndy was always keen and has always been keen to end it in the sort of animated form on TV. So while they were given the rights, I think they were told that they could not complete the story. And if there's anybody out there listening who is not sure what to buy me for next Christmas, you can buy me that comic book series. I'd be
anyone who's listening through the door while we record.
Well, they occasionally listen to it on their app on their iPhones as well. So if you're listening, Santa could be really nice to Veet here and produce this 20 book comic book series. Plug,
I'm
plug.
I'm easy in comparison. I take magic cards. It's simple.
Yeah. And I think the comic book series would be easier to get in New Zealand than it would be to get magic cards. But there you go. In 2015, it is announced that Samurai Jack is coming back to TV. I discover this tweet and I madly forward it to my daughter, and we proceed to get all hyped up and excited about Samurai Jack coming back to TV. But there's about a year of silence. I am on the internet, my daughter's on the internet, trying to find out when it could possibly be showing, what is it going to be about, will we get a conclusion, and there's just nothing from this initial announcement. Then at the beginning of this year, in 2017, they make a formal announcement that after 13 years, Samurai Jack's coming back to TV. It's going to be a 5th and final season of 10 episodes. And it's to be shown on Adult Swim. Now, for those non-American listeners to the show, I'll ask one of my American hosts to explain Adult Swim. James or
Get
Robert?
out now. Avoid. It's a wonderful time. If you're into sick, depraved, absolutely demented crap, it's wonderful.
Adult Swim is basically a high concept version of public access TV.
That's
like-
generous.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, well, public access is people who tend to have no good ideas or don't have focused ideas.
I think
Adult
that's a better
Swim
way
is
of putting
like-
it.
Adult Swim is like, if you pour like a gallon of Red Bull down a dude and then inject him with Adderall and put him in a room where Dark Side of the Moon is playing backwards 24/7, that's Adult Swim.
All right, explain.
This is a
Go
I was going to say this is a block that seriously puts out a television series about the adventures of animated fast food.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
It's a demented thing. But they did introduce me to Family Guy, and for that they are forgiven.
True. Explain.
'cause it's like-
Other than that, it's just a demented, screwed up place. It's basically, if you're making an animated feature, or not animated anymore these days because Cartoon Network has lost their way, but if you have a really like adult, crazy themed, just dark, edgy, disturbing, weird concept, whatever it may be, Adult Swim is the home for you, apparently.
It's the home place of things such as Squidbillies, the redneck hillbilly squids that live in the South.
I remember.
And also Boondocks.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the States, I stumbled across it, and there was an episode of Birdman dubbed with
Oh God!
just different voices.
Harvey Birdman, attorney at law.
It was just like, yeah, they introduced their own dialogue over this previous episode of the Birdman. Explain, where do you see it? How do you come across it?
It's late nights on Cartoon Network. It is quite literally Adult Swim. I mean, it starts. What does it start? Like at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., something ridiculous like that, and it goes for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is like, when I say that this stuff is messed up, it is. You cannot imagine this stuff. You have to see it. It is so screwed.
Here's the thing. The entire Adult Swim, I don't know what to call it. It's caused in the 90s by Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which was, no joke, a Dadaist late night talk show using a purchased intellectual property about like a 1960s space superhero.
Yeah, Space Ghost. And
that's where things that show is where Cartoon Planet comes from, The Brack Show, Aqua Teen Hunger Force gets its start on there. Like, the seeds are sown in Space Ghost, where anything goes. It is very random. You would have, like, Space Ghost as cartoon hero would do interviews with, like, Hulk Hogan, Seth Green, Ron Howard. There was one of the most infamous times was when they... Adam West agreed to do an interview on there. He said the only thing you can't mention is the car shows, because Adam West's career had bombed so horribly and pitifully. The only jobs he could get was making sad appearances at car auto shows. And he gets on the air. The first question out of Space Ghost's mouth is, "So how about those auto shows?" And Adam West goes, "That's it. It's over." He's like,
done.
"Well, there you go, folks. That's our interview."
Wow. So
they gave no F's.
Adult Swim, I think originally when it came on, was aired after midnight. And gradually over time, as it became, I guess, gained more popularity, it encroached into later evenings. So I think it might even start as early as 9 o'clock now, because they've gained a bit more popularity, that some of their more popular shows are shown earlier on in this block, and then deteriorates into some of the programming that we've just mentioned.
It slowly has a mental breakdown.
Exactly.
As the
night
night goes on.
goes on.
It really does. And the best part too is there are these cards that are in black and white, just these text cards, where the people who are actually putting Adult Swim together basically communicate with the audience. And this is like pre-Twitter, where they're basically just going, "So hey guys, how do you feel about this? Talk to us on the message boards." And it was the weirdest, trippiest thing. They would communicate with the audience on these cards that they would just put up, following like after an episode would end and it was about to go into commercial, you'd see a card. They'd have commercials, and then the episode would be about to come back, you'd have a card. And sometimes these cards were just the wittiest stuff. And like I would no joke, I would go to the gym, because I used to have like this 24-hour gym membership. I would go to the gym late at night so I could be on the treadmill to watch Adult Swim just for the cards, because they were so fun. And Family Guy was on.
That's true.
But yeah, it's a weird thing. The bottom line though is that when they say that Samurai Jack is coming back on Adult Swim, you immediately know two things. One, darker and edgier.
Yes.
Guaranteed.
Yes.
Guaranteed. He's not going to have any handcuffs on as far as like what he can and cannot show on this final season. Which, considering that the fan base has grown up over the past decade, is probably a good move.
Yep.
And then the other thing, you are not going to know what to expect. It could have, there could have been blood and guts and gore and all kinds of stuff. Now, surprisingly enough, I mean, if you're going to get into this, or I'm not sure, but surprisingly enough, it is still the show that came on over a decade ago. Like, it's actually not like psycho gory or anything.
No.
Like they didn't change it.
Nope.
It's still very much Jack, but it is psychologically far more mature.
Oh yes, yep, and I'll get into that right in a sec. So it's announced it's on Adult Swim, exactly as Robert has said. Rumors start flying about how much darker is it going to be? What themes and topics are we going to be touching on?
So much darker.
Now, the problem that us folks here who are not living in the United States are having is that getting our hands on episodes of Samurai Jack. It's like you just announced it's coming out in March 2017, and I can't find a legal way of watching it in New Zealand. And you're kidding me. I'm not going to wait 6 or 12 months for it to show up on some licensed form so I can start watching it. So I'm watching it on YouTube. Yes, it's probably not completely legal, but a couple nice people have decided to put up the episodes. Actually, it's surprising how many complete episodes are up and watchable on YouTube. you could probably watch the entire show of Samurai Jack on YouTube. It's all there, or mostly all there.
Give out the secrets.
Well, I have to get my fix of Samurai Jack. You can't dangle this carrot and not allow me to watch it. So that's what we did. We've seen 4 episodes have been out, 4 of the 10. I will get into a few spoilers here. But I'll also tell you, I'll complete the story I started off earlier about how this show got me in trouble with my wife a second time.
Hang on just a second.
Yep.
We would like to take this moment to let you know that here at In One's Kin, we do not support the cool action of intellectual piracy, no matter how awesome the things that you coolly pirate are.
Actually, in all seriousness, for me, if I can buy something, I will buy it.
Yeah.
I am so against piracy, it's not even funny.
Right.
The problem is, Veet's in New Zealand and has no recourse.
No, if I go
Seriously.
into the Adult Swim website, I have to log in. Fine. I then have to give my cable company's the username and password that I have for my my subscription with them, which I don't have, so I can't watch it on Adult Swim. iTunes, Amazon can't sell it here because we're geo-blocked. So I have no legal way of watching it. I'm happy to do whatever it is to legally, either purchase it, pay for my Netflix, pay for a subscription or whatever to watch it, and I can't.
New Zealand, the land where they can literally record Power Rangers in your backyard, but you can't watch it on TV.
Exactly. Now, having said that, it is getting better. Particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, it has gotten so much better. But like 3 years ago, we were so geo-blocked, it was ridiculous. And it explains
North
why
Korea is less geo-blocked than New Zealand.
I don't doubt it. It explains why Kim.com and BitTorrent were so successful. Because of geo-blocking. You can't, and the news and the media tells you what's around, what can be seen, and then says, no, you can't watch it in your specific area. So, there you go. Just make it all available. I'll pay for it. That's fine. Or I'll continue paying for my Netflix. I'll watch it there. That's fine. So, it's on Adult Swim. All the rumors start. Sam and I was telling the story. That's right. I got sidetracked by geo-blocking. So, March 24th was the first episode. I'm lying in bed and I can't sleep. And it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And what generally happens is if I can't sleep is I'll get up and I'll go and sit in front of my computer. Usually I'll play a handful of games of Hearthstone or mess around on World of Warcraft for a bit. And then about an hour later, I'm feeling a bit more tired and I go to bed and I sleep.
Effing Caverns card. It's ruining that game.
So, but at this time I'm sitting in front of my computer and I said, there has to be a way for me to see these episodes of Samurai Jack. It came out yesterday. There has to be a way. So I'm searching. I've gone through the Adult Swim site. I've gone through Cartoon Network. I've gone through Amazon. I've gone through Netflix. None of them say anything about it. So I then remember how much of Samurai Jack was previously put on YouTube. So I hop on YouTube. And there in front of me is the full 22 minutes episode. I hit play. And I watch it. And I am just enthralled. And I love it. Except the next morning, I make the mistake with my wife sitting on the sofa next to me and Sam walking into the room. And I said, we have to watch Samurai Jack. I've just seen the first episode and it's just brilliant. And my daughter's jaw just drops. And my wife turns red. And she turns to me and said, how could you watch it without Samantha being there?
I knew that was coming.
And I went, but it was 1 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't sleep and I was trying to find a way of watching it and it was there. And how could I not hit play?
Traitor.
My daughter was devastated. She literally was saddened And I felt like crap. And the whole time, Claire's in my ear going, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you watched an episode with her, Samantha. Do you know how much you two bonded over that show? How much you stuck by her side when I was trying to tell her that she can't watch it because it was too violent? And I'm going, it's okay. We'll watch it again. I swear. We'll watch it. Oh, I'm happy to watch them all again. So after getting an earful from Claire, I walked into Sam's room, I sit on the floor, and I have to humbly apologize. And she is genuinely, I guess, saddened is the best way to describe it. And I guess I didn't realize just how much that show meant to her, not so much from an appreciation, and yes, she loves that show, but how much we had actually bonded over that show. And what it meant for her, in the influence it had for her in becoming an artist as well. So I sort of like, bow lowly and apologize, and bow lowly some more and apologize some more. And I said, right, let's go watch it. So we lock ourselves in the office, and I pull it up on YouTube again, and we sit there and we're watching it, and we're just getting all the right feels again of just sitting right next to each other, watching Samurai Jack back on screen. And we both love the first episode. We've seen 4 now. There's a fifth out waiting to be watched. Now, that's probably what I'll do after this episode is done. Robert is absolutely right. It's edgier. It is psychologically more darker. And I'm going to go into spoilers here just to show where the direction this show has taken. Okay? The first thing is, it's 50 years in the future. Jack hasn't aged, and it's due to some time travel effect. I've always said that time travel stories are always a bit dodgy, and this is one of those dodgy effects of time travel. The world around him has moved on, but Jack has not aged. Except he's sporting this fabulous beard. A long hair and fabulous beard now. The world he exists in is still under Aku's control and hasn't really changed either. It's still mechanized. He still rules the world. It does focus a lot on the mental anguish and turmoil that Jack is now undergoing. Because you have to think about it. He's been on this journey now for 50 years. And he hasn't made a dent. In fact, you get the impression he's turned himself off from that original goal. He's just existing. And you get a sense that you feel sad for Jack. Because time has moved on and he hasn't. And yet he has 50 years worth of memory just twirling around in his brain. He starts having visions of an unknown horseman. He starts hearing his own voice start to torment him. And it's beautifully portrayed. Again, minimalistic, him sitting in silence, rain and thunder clapping all around him, and this ghost of a original looking Samurai Jack in the white kimono just tormenting him in his ear, just not letting him go about, has he forgotten his parents? Has he forgotten his goals? Now, I said about spoilers, a couple things. Jack has lost his sword. We don't know how, except we see one very fast flashback of Jack losing the grip of the sword and the sword falling down an abyss. But we don't know what's led to that point or whereabouts in the timeline this has happened. So Jack is without his sword. Also, like Robert mentioned, we actually see blood for the first time in this series. Now, when I said there was no blood in the original series, you see Jack being scratched up after a fight, so he has red scratches on his body. But there's no blood gushing or even dripping from his body. They're just red scratches. We actually see blood spurting and blood gushing and blood dripping in this in this final season. And it's such a crimson red that it stands out from the rest of the color scheme that's used throughout this program. And like Robert mentioned, it looks the same. It visually is the same. Artistically, it's the same. Acoustically, I should say, not autistically. There you go. Acoustically, it's the same. It is in this exact same program, same person, same story, except that now they've been allowed to go a little edgier, being allowed to deal with topics that, as Robert rightly pointed out, the audience has now grown up. It has also matured. My 4.5-year-old is now an 18-year-old. So I guess they're allowed to mature the story, the telling of the story, I should say, probably more accurately. Jack actually kills his first human, unknown to Jack, because he thought he was fighting another robot. He has this group of 7 female-looking bodies approaching with the intention of killing Jack. They overwhelm him. They cause a great deal of harm to Jack. And just before he manages to strike one down, one of them manages to get a knife into Jack's side. So you got this knife sticking in his body with blood dripping from it. He's smearing blood everywhere, all around him. He's staggering. He manages to get in a final swipe at one of these 7 female-looking assailants, and the neck is chopped and blood actually spills from her neck. And Jack is stunned. He is just like taken aback. It's just an experience he's just never had. Everything up till now has been a robot, has been a machine, has spurted black oil or sometimes a green ooze. But he's just taken aback because in front of him is now a dead human with blood dripping from her neck. And all this does is add to his mental anguish, his mental torment, that now he has betrayed his own personal philosophies of never actually harming another human. Obviously, Aku is back, but obviously Mako has left this mortal coil, so he's now voiced by Greg Baldwin, who's good, but he's not Mako. But Aku's dealing with his own turmoil, so much so that he's seeing a psychologist, with him sitting on the therapist's couch, depressed that after all these years, Jack is still around. This thorn in his side is still around. And he won't go away, and he won't leave him be. So much so that Aku's so depressed that he actually doesn't care anymore. He doesn't care what the citizens on his world are up to. He doesn't care. He's actually reached the point where he actually doesn't care whether Samurai Jack is alive or dead. But that scene with the psychologist, again, is just filled with humor, with one-liners. You just see him sad and depressed, and he's just cracking off these quick quips or these one-liners, and Sam and I are just like smirking and laughing and having a good time at Aku's own torment. Am I happy that there's only one more season and 10 episodes? No. I've been so caught up in the anticipation and then finally seeing these last 3-4 episodes that I just want more. But I'm okay. I think, yes, there will be a conclusion. That's what all the insinuation is, that yes, we'll get a definite conclusion. This will be the final to the Jack story. What that actually means, we don't know. But just these last 4 episodes have just been everything I've wanted and more. That, for me, folks, is Samurai Jack. I can't tell you how much how much I love this program. It is different. It is superb, and it's classical. It's a show you can certainly watch again and again and again. I've mentioned how much I love Looney Tunes, and yes, that is classical too. But now, going back and watching it, it has an age to it. Yeah, even though the humor is technically ageless, I still think it's aged a bit. Samurai Jack hasn't aged for me, but we're only talking about 13, 15 years' time. I'll be interested to see what I think in about 20. But I truly love it. I recommend it highly. You don't have to have watched the previous 4 seasons to even appreciate this final season, because they do a very good job, again, with the narrative at the beginning of each episode to set up where we're at with Jack. That is 50 years in the future. Jack hasn't aged, but he's still trying to get back. So that's me. That's Samurai Jack for me. I'll let you guys hop in here and say your pieces if you have anything to say.
I'm just a big Genndy Tartakovsky fan in general. I mean, I like all of his shows. Dexter's Lab, Powerpuff Girls, Clone Wars, and Samurai Jack. And, those have just all been great fun. And he's done other projects too, though at the moment I can't bring them off the top of my head, and I'm very tired.
The most popular thing he's done recently has been the Transylvania 3D CGI movies. And there's actually there's been 3 of them now. With that. I knew he was involved in the first. I didn't realize there was a 2 and a 3. So that's how popular they've been.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about it too is I've always enjoyed the humor associated with it. Like I don't know how much of it you can directly contribute to solely being him, True. But there's always been a sort of an edge to all of his shows that I've always just found myself drawn to. In Powerpuff Girls especially, I thought it was just remarkable how much crap that show got under the radar of the censors and stuff. It's like, oh, this episode's really about that, huh? Okay. And, he would do that a lot. He also is responsible for one of my favorite quotes of all time, just because of how bizarre and straight up it is. But there's an episode of Dexter's Lab where his older sister, Dee Dee, walks by and beats him up and takes his money that he'd just been given by his parents. He had this money. It's the first time he's had money. And he just looks up at Dee Dee and he goes, "But why did you take my money?" And she goes, "Because you're so small and weak, I could." And it was like, wow. It's just ridiculous. But, he dials all of that back, like, to degrees that just cannot be explained. He just dials it all back and then gives you this work of art in the form of Samurai Jack, where it's a little kooky. It can be light and fluffy at times. And, like you're talking about the whole thing with the Scotsman, for example, which, deserved all the rewards that it got. That was one of my favorite episodes also. It has those moments where it can be weird, but on the whole, it's a very different animal, and you just can't help but get kind of caught up in what it is that you're seeing. It's very unique. It's very different. You were talking about the art style. I mean, aside from minimalism, I can just say straight lines.
Yes. Straight
lines everywhere. And it has that strength that animated things and stylized things have, where you can watch this 40 years from now and it will still be what it is, because there's no frame of reference, there's no basis that you can compare it against, right? It looks like itself. It's kind of one of those strengths that, we've all been playing World of Warcraft for far too long now at this point. One of the reasons why World of Warcraft is still around is because it doesn't matter how many graphical improvements there are in everything else. World of Warcraft just looks like World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
It has such a unique appearance that it doesn't matter if the engine that it's running on, though heavily modified at this point, is, over a decade old. It doesn't matter. And the same is true for Samurai Jack. It doesn't matter how much technology may advance in animation and everything else, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, it'll still just look like Samurai Jack.
Interesting piece of detail. So the first 4 seasons, the backgrounds are hand painted. In this fifth season, it is actually digitally created, but you can't tell.
Oh, well, I can tell. There's a lot of it. I've always been cursed with this. I can tell. Sure. A lot of it is very much CG, kind of like the bike he rides in the opening. Yeah. The bike is CG. I mean, it's designed to look like it's drawn, but it's not, and I can tell because it's too perfect, it's too clean. But that's just a quirk with me. Let it go.
Sure. James, any last words?
It's good.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Well, you're welcome to wrap it up, mate. I'm said my bit.
I'm falling asleep here.
All right, wrap it up.
Oh man, this has been episode 207. Been Once Kin. You can always leave us Facebook on feedback.
There you go.
At feedback.com/oncekin. What's our next episode? Whose turn is it? Mine?
It's my turn. Wow, you are tired. Oh. I follow the Veet. No, next week, we're going to talk in a general sense as a genre, zombies.
Cool.
Zombies, and so many zombies. With emphasis on The Walking Dead. But zombies.
Okay.
Sounds awesome.
Yes, it does.
Sounds kind of apocalyptic to me.
Later, guys.
Watcha!
Gotta get back to the past samurai jack. 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 Gotta get back. Samurai jack.